Well, thank you for joining me for another Google Hangout class. This one is on the topic of the special relationship. And the special relationship, it was just Valentine's Day a couple days ago, and I actually was inspired to have a gathering here in San Rafael at the place I'm staying. And I I didn't expect it to be well attended because I set the time to be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Valentine's Day evening. So it felt like, it wasn't really about getting people to come though, but really just offering. It was a symbol. It was a way of offering an alternative that for those who do feel like they wish to go deep into that idea and really look at it in their own mind and use the day for that kind of examination, then they could come to my gathering. But I only had one person come, and actually it turned out to be so perfect. It was just it was a dear friend who I've been in this kind of in this community of people who are awakening and really using their life for spiritual experiences to go deeper into that. It was one of those friends in the community who I hadn't seen in quite a while, and we just had a very, very rich discussion around special relationship and many, many other topics that all relate to how do we apply these teachings from A Course in Miracles and also from David Hoffmeister, who's been, to me, the most clear example, the most clear demonstration, the clearest teacher of the Course and and how do we really apply that to our life. David has been practicing the Course. Well, I wouldn't say he practices it anymore, but he began studying the Course in 1986 and spent many years just immersing in it, just reading it for 2.5 years. He just would read it for 8 hours a day, just immersing in it, and then began to actually hear the voice of Jesus speaking very clearly in his mind, and that's not a very common thing. I think a lot of us, we think we hear the Holy Spirit, and I think we do. We do hear the Holy Spirit, but it comes through many filters still, and so we're not really hearing it directly, but we're getting intimations of what the Spirit is telling us, and that's what we need to begin to trust. We definitely don't want to minimize. I'm not saying that we're not hearing the Holy Spirit, but that whatever degree we do hear it, and the love that is coming through the filters that are in our mind is how we nurture. We want to nurture that voice. We want to nurture that relationship. That is the antidote to the special relationship. And David began to just really follow that voice and trust it completely, even though it felt like it meant that everything else would have to be released. And that is what it means. It does. This is a calling. The Holy Spirit is calling us out of this world, and for those who are deeply wound into the world, I put that part of the title of this class was a Google Hangout to unwind your mind. That's also the title of one of David's recent books, where it was a lot of the people who were inspired to volunteer in his community put together a lot of transcripts of his earlier talks with students in the 1990s, where they just went so deeply into these ideas and how to, really specifically too, like if someone has a job and they're not enjoying their job and they want to begin to open up to an alternative, how can I live, and how can I trust that I'll be taken care of if I stop compromising? Because this world is just full of compromises. This whole world is a compromise. And within it, it seems like as human beings, we're forced to compromise our happiness over and over and over and over and over again, and it's just so disheartening to live that way. And I finally reached a point as well where I just was fed up. I couldn't stand it anymore. It was too too painful. It actually became impossible to continue doing the things that I was doing just to try to survive, to maintain, survival in this world. And it just doesn't work when it doesn't bring happiness. And I was just reminded recently of that line in the Bible where Jesus says, he says, those who attempt to save their life will lose it. But those who are willing to let go of their life will gain it. And I reached that point where it wasn't worth it anymore to try to survive in this world. I don't know if I would say that I was actually willing to die, but because I think that's really deep. I mean, to see that the special relationship we have with our own body is one of the core special relationships. I wrote a post on Facebook recently saying that, underneath all the special relationships we seem to have with people, with food, with our preferences, with our money, our possessions, etc., and even with our spirituality, all the relationships that seem to make us who we are really come down to a sense of, I have a special relationship with me, with being me, and feeling like I know that me, that I know who I am, and I know what I like, and I know what I dislike. And I did come to a point, however, where I felt like I was willing to just drop it all. I was willing to be homeless if that's what it took, because I knew that if I wanted to really experience the truth that this course is pointing to, I had to take I had to really trust. I had to go inward and feel the feelings that were arising for me, and just begin to trust the other voice. There's always that choice in the mind where we're being offered two options, two voices to listen to, and they are diametrically opposed. One voice is always leading us to death. It is always, using techniques to trick the mind into thinking that it has to follow that voice in order to survive. And the Spirit's voice is constantly offering love, constantly saying that, no, your life is not in this world. You actually don't exist in this world the way you think you do. You exist here in God with me, and this is your birthright. This is your happiness. This is your joy. This is not something you can just forget about. You seem to have forgotten about it for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. But no, it can't go on indefinitely. The pain of forgetting who we are, the pain of forgetting our source in God, it's intolerable to maintain that forever. We can't really just drop our identity in spirit. It takes a lot of trust to begin to question the ego, since the ego was the substitute. It was kind of the substitute for God that was invented by the mind to really, make us think that we actually could survive apart from God. But this path, this course, what Jesus is offering us is the escape hatch, and it's just so worth it. It just, it's amazing how even in this world, we are taken care of. There's a line in the course that says, the messenger is worth his keep. That by simply following Jesus, just like he offered people 2,000 years ago when he seemed to be here physically, by following him and saying, I really want to give my whole mind over to you and to what you're offering me. I want to support you in supporting me, supporting my true self, that we will be taken care of, that we'll be fully taken care of, and not just like with crumbs. Crumbs is what we've been living on. Even for those who seem to have a lot of wealth in this world, you really look deeply and you can see that no one in this world who really believes they're here is happy, and it's actually quite sad when you see people who seem to have everything, like Marilyn Monroe. seemed to be one who had all the fame, the fortune, the famous husbands, and all the things that the world says are valuable, and yet committed suicide, was in pain. That's really what the ego offers us. It offers us an illusion of happiness, an illusion of fulfillment, and an illusion of abundance, which leads to death. It's kind of like in the slaughterhouses, when they trick the cows into going down the path that will ultimately lead in getting their heads chopped off. That's what this world is, and it's very, very sneaky, very seductive, and it's hard to see unless there's an opening in the heart, a real opening that goes, there must be a way out of this. That's the point that Helen Schuckman reached when she made, actually it was Bill Thetford who made that famous speech to Helen, where he said there's got to be another way. And that was kind of the impetus for when the Course began to come through, where she opened her mind up to him and said, "You're right, Bill." She was surprised to even hear herself say that. "You're right. There is another way, and I will help you find it." And then it was very shortly thereafter when A Course in Miracles started to come through her. So I thought I'd play a song to start off this class, which I feel is kind of the antidote to the special relationship, because we can't just sort of abandon the special relationship. We can't pretend that we don't value our seeming life. We can't just say, well, okay, I'm just gonna give it all up and just just pretend that I actually don't value these things. We have to really look at what we believe. And what the Spirit does is it offers us the ego's ingenious in the way it tricks us, but the Spirit is equally ingenious in how he frees us. He actually uses our special relationships to unwind us from them. And so the special relationship that we have with ourself and with our skills can actually be given over to the Spirit and used not to imprison us, but to free us, and to actually free us by giving us experiences that prove that we are the love we are seeking. And so I had this song come through a while back that is called "Shine Through," and it was about my call for the Spirit to shine through me, to learn to trust in that love, and have more and more experiences of that love coming through, and really reminding me that this love is what my identity consists of. I'm going to take out the microphone. I can feel your love shine, shine, shine. I hear you whisper to me, everything is fine. Now all I do is listen to you. Tell me everything I've got to do to open up and let your love shine through. I can see your face smile, smile, smile. The time I spend with you is so worthwhile. Now all I wanna do is look at you and let your smiling face teach me how to open up and let your love shine through. I'm beginning to remember all the love that I once knew, and all my fear is disappearing as I disappear in you. I can feel your love shine, shine, shine. Hear your laughter and it heals my mind. Now all I want to do is listen to your gentle laughter teaching me how to open up and let your love shine through. Nothing more that I want to do than listen to your music, teach me how to open up and let your love shine through. Yeah, there's just nothing better than that experience of feeling ourself become more and more transparent. It's almost as if the solidity of the body, of the separate self, begins to start to loosen. You know, our mind begins to release the grip, you know, the mental grip on the self that we think we are. And as that is loosened, it seems kind of tumultuous oftentimes in the beginning, and even as we go deeper and deeper, and it seems like we're just peeling away more layers of the onion and getting in touch with these beliefs that have been buried way, way down in the mind, down in the unconscious mind. The onion seems to get smaller, and the self that we think we are seems to get lighter. And as it gets it's almost like it starts to become more porous, so that the light beyond it can shine through us. And that's how we discover that we are that light, and that we are completely safe, completely held, completely invulnerable. Actually, that's the most freeing experience. When we have those glimpses of our invulnerability. And Jesus says in the Course that our goal is to make your invulnerability manifest. Don't hide your light under a bush. Don't think that you need to look a certain way or to protect people from the light. Let it become, let it shine. Let it become brighter and brighter and brighter. And yes, it's not going to, the world will never understand this. The world will never, there will be witnesses. There will be people who come who say, wow, I'm drawn to you. I'm drawn to the light that you shine, and we do start to draw forth witnesses of that. But initially, it often feels as if we have to kind of just lose everything, because all the witnesses that we initially have drawn forth in our life were mostly, I wouldn't say all of them, but the majority of them in an average life are drawn forth by the ego to keep us stuck there, and thinking that those people are our sustenance, that knowing them, that having connections, and that giving them what we think they want and what they say they want and need is what will protect us, because then we have a hook. Then we can say, okay, I gave you what you need, now I need you to give me what I need. And that's really what the special relationship is about. It's always a reciprocal arrangement that the ego has made, and the ego has set up many of them. There's always, it never wants to just put all its eggs in one basket, so it's gonna invent lots and lots of special relationships that seem to give us something that we think we need and think we want, and then it's got us stuck in this fear of loss, not realizing we've already lost heaven by following the ego in the first place. It says, well, yeah, you lost heaven, but and there's no going back to that. That's done with. You ruined it. You definitely ruined heaven, and God is dead. That's what the ego will say. You not consciously, but under the surface, the ego says, yep, you exist now, and God does not. And now, there's really no choice but to just accept this world as real, and to struggle to survive within it. But, it doesn't have to be all bad, the ego says. I can give you little bits of pleasure here and there, and I can, if you listen to me, I will make you comfortable in this world. And I will, I can even make you powerful in this world. I can bring you, we can go to the top. We can actually have other people who depend on us, and we can be the ones who are on the top. We can be kind of like, we can be our own God. And that seems quite like, that sounds actually pretty good. That's what people want. They want to have power, and they just don't realize where the power really is. They think it actually can be experienced as a separate self, a little self that has power over other little selves. And yeah, it's just funny. It's funny to play that game. It's almost like a little child playing with action figures on the floor, and then getting so caught up in it that he forgets where he is. That he just totally forgets that he has a loving mother and father, and he has everything he needs, and he's totally provided for, and it's a huge amnesia that we've fallen into. It's like a cosmic amnesia, this game of time and space. But it doesn't need to be this way. We do have the power. It is our mind that has chosen it, and is still choosing it. And in any moment we can choose to go back, to say, oh no, this isn't my birthright. This isn't what God has promised me. There is a way out. There is even right now, there's a means of happiness and peace in every moment. The Course talks about the holy instant as being a means to accepting the peace now. And it seems to take lots of holy instants to come to the final holy instant. But it doesn't matter how many it takes. It's like, do you want to be happy? And you can be happy now. It's a gift. There's a treasure house, there's a storehouse of treasures beyond what we can imagine that are available to us. We are actually rich. I love the analogy that Eckhart Tolle has used. I think he used it at the very beginning of his initial book, The Power of Now, where it's as if there's like a rich man who has completely forgotten how much money he has, and he suddenly thinks he's a beggar, and he starts scrounging around, and he just doesn't realize that he doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to scrounge. He has everything. And why would we forget that? Why would we choose to forget our inheritance? Only if the idea of specialness, of being on our own, if that seemed to have some value to it. And this is where, when we really just contemplate this idea, it can be so helpful, so fruitful to spend time just letting the Spirit take us inward to this original decision for specialness instead of reality. It can actually be seen, like I posted on Facebook the other day, that the special relationship isn't really with other people and with other things and possessions and so forth. It's really a special relationship with the idea of separation, or we could say with duality. It's a special relationship with me, with being me, a little me instead of the true me. And the only way that we can, we just want to really look at it. We just want to be, we don't want this to be unconscious anymore that we're doing this. We want to actually start to just see it, and it's just about being willing to see the truth. The truth cannot hurt us, even though the ego advises us, if you go back and you really look at what you did, you will be blinded. I think he says at some point in the Course that the ego says, if you try to go back to God, God will strike you blind. Even though he also tries to convince us that we killed God, he then changes his tune if we actually begin to go back to God. He goes, well, God is alive still, but you killed him, but he came back from the grave, or whatever. He didn't die completely, and and he's very angry at you. So, but of course the ego doesn't even say that to us. Instead, he says, if you start to really go into the truth, you're going to suffer in this world. This world will not support you. This world will not support this journey. If you take this leap of faith and you begin to question your beliefs, then don't expect anyone to agree with you, and you're gonna, there's gonna be hardships if you do that. But the Spirit says, no. Like, I have a plan for you. I have, like, the Spirit is, and just to go into the metaphysics a little bit, the Spirit isn't like an entity, like a ghost that's floating around. The Spirit is actually the part of our mind that remembers everything. A part of our mind that remembers God and also remembers the way we seemed to separate from God and make up this world, and which sees through all of it and sees how it's really just a big, kind of like a cosmic movie screen that we're watching, on which we've projected images and all the different kind of scenes that can play out. And it's kind of like we're sitting there with a remote control, and the remote control really only has two buttons on it. It's ego or spirit. Who do I want to give what I made to? Which part of my mind? the part the purpose of which is separation, or the part of which the purpose is healing and awakening. Which purpose do I want to give this movie to? And it's like a movie with, it's kind of like a database of scenes, like a database of little movie clips that are all strung together, and kind of like a computer video game where there's lots of different possibilities. Like, we seem to have choices of whether we turn left or turn right, and so forth. But really, there's only two choices. There's only the ego or the spirit, and which we choose. It's really about who are we going to give the power to direct this movie. When we choose the spirit, then our mind is, the movie then comes from a different place. It reflects the love. It's still the ego's movie, but we can then see it. We can interpret it differently, and scenes that would have had to play, that the ego would have played out, which would have just kept us in a loop, a pattern of playing the same pattern over and over again. We can avoid those. We can seem to, by choosing the spirit says, okay, great, you don't need to keep playing that out anymore. We can cut that whole section of the database out, and that's what the Course means by collapsing time. It's helping to shorten the time between now and when we no longer need the dream at all. We seem to need it now because it would be too frightening to go from this state of believing, whatever we seem to believe about ourselves, to an experience of pure abstraction, of pure heaven. That would just be too wide of a contrast, it seems. And so a spirit just takes us gently, step by step, offers us a very gradual curriculum that is specifically designed for the mind that we perceive ourselves to be, for whatever our seemingly individual and special needs are, in order to just offer us these little ways of releasing little by little. And we can actually take big leaps of faith too at times that seem to undo a whole huge layer of what we would call the self-concept of who we think ourselves to be. And sometimes, the self-concept is often undone by really guiding us into areas where we would say are outside of our comfort zone. I heard a story about a friend of David's who had been she had actually gone into I don't know if it's called the seminary or whatever, the religious order, to become a nun. She had gone all the way through all the steps to become a nun, to the final point when she was when you take your final process where you marry Jesus. And at that point she realized that this path wasn't really what she truly wanted. It wasn't going to be truly helpful, and so she left. She left Jesus there at the altar, and was guided to. But Jesus was actually in her mind guiding her to go somewhere else, to actually begin to open up in a very different way. And so it was actually more symbolic of marrying Jesus by staying with him, truly in her mind, although she may not have thought of it that way at the time. And up to that point, she had been quite celibate. I'm not clear on all the details, but as far as I understood it, she had only had maybe one sexual relationship up to that point, and I think she was in her early 20s or maybe even older than that, and was actually guided because of her upbringing in the church, had a lot of issues, a lot of fears around sexuality, a lot of being raised in Catholicism, there can be a lot of distortions that are taught about sex and about the moral rightness or wrongness of certain kinds of sex, or sex out of wedlock, and so forth. And in order to loosen her from these these feelings of kind of being trapped and very, having to be so proper, she was actually guided to start being more open with her sexuality. And I don't know exactly how that went. I didn't hear all the details, but I think that, it was just baby steps. I think the initial step was she was guided to go skinny dipping one day, and that was something that she never would have done. And it just began the process of opening her up to see that really the body is neutral, that there isn't anything, there isn't anything that is shameful or that is holy about the body, because a lot of spiritualities will try to swing the other way, and in order to kind of fight against the church's or the ego's ideas around shame and the body, then some spiritualities will try to swing to the other side and say, well, the body is sacred and it's like a temple, but really it's neither. The body is a wholly neutral thing. It's actually, in one place in A Course in Miracles, Jesus says the body is nothing. And when you really open up to the metaphysics of the Course and open up to non-duality, to pure non-duality, the awareness that there's only oneness, and anything that appears to have a border to it, have edges to it, everything of perception isn't real. So it must be that it doesn't actually have any true existence, although it seems like it's become very real within the dream. Everything feels quite solid as long as the mind is asleep. And that's the state we find ourselves in now. So the Spirit has to gently wake us up, and it does this through a process of guiding us into experiences that seem outside of our comfort zone. It will take someone who is very, maybe on the opposite side, and who's very open with their body and very sexual and kind of has a belief that they can just sleep with whomever they want. And the Spirit will say, well, that's not really helpful anymore. It's time for you to really focus on one person and be monogamous and really commit yourself. And yeah, it's just so individualized how the Spirit will use us. And it's always, I think, a big fear that a lot of people have is that if we follow the Spirit's guidance, that the Spirit may ask us to do things that are not appropriate, that are not loving, that we may be asked to abandon people in our life who we think we have a responsibility to. But all I can say about that is that I've never seen that. Whenever someone has been guided to do something, and they've really been following that guidance sincerely and with humbleness, it actually is the most loving and most appropriate way of gradually unwinding from these seeming responsibilities. It's always very loving. It's always exactly what's needed, and even though sometimes it can seem that people are having reactions and even seemingly being hurt by the choices that we make with the Spirit, it's always a charade. The ego is always basically trying to keep us bound by guilt, and so the ego comes up seemingly in brothers and sisters who feel that there's something wrong with what we're doing, because it forces them to also go into themselves. Every time we make a decision with Spirit, it's like a huge invitation to everyone to do the same for themselves. And the ego doesn't like that. The ego, of course, is going to rebel and come up in certain ones and say, you are being irresponsible, you're being selfish, this is not helpful. And these are just the witnesses to our doubt thoughts that need to be faced. It says in the Course that the accuser, it's using that as like anytime we're being accused of anything, the accuser will appear in many forms. The ego is the accuser, and the accuser will seem to accuse us through maybe our biological parents, through work associates. Even with the Course in Miracles, when we start to really go deeper, we may have friends that we've been studying the Course with for years who may say to us, you're starting to act a little goofy. This isn't really what the Course is about. You don't have to leave your job. You don't have to leave your family and follow your heart. You can do that. You can practice the Course right where you are. And actually, we have to be willing to follow the guidance, even if it does seem radical. The idea that you can stay and just, choose your own curriculum and say, I'm going to stay in this classroom, as some teachers will call it, even though the classroom really isn't, we can't really define any situation in the world as the classroom, because the classroom, our mind is the classroom. Our mind is where we're learning the lesson between choosing spirit versus the ego, and our mind encompasses everything. So it's really our mind that is the classroom. But it seems that as we begin to go deeper and deeper with this, that we'll be guided to make choices that aren't going to be popular. Even to our friends who've been studying the Course with us for a while, we just have to trust, though, that if it feels right in our heart, that it's really not going, we're not really leaving anyone behind. We're just going into we're actually going into the awareness of our unity. We're going into the awareness that abandonment is impossible because there's only one of us. There are not 7 billion different people out there. There's one mind that is inventing the idea of multiplicity. And this idea of multiplicity, when taken seriously, is quite a distraction. The world of the cosmos of time and space, I've heard David Hoffmeister call it Distractionville. It just is full of opportunities to think that the cause of our feelings, either our happiness or our upsets, is coming from the multiplicity, coming from the specifics, coming from this person said that, or this person did that, this atrocity happened over in this country, and or this thing happened to this person, and that's wonderful, and now I'm getting what I need, and so I feel happy because my body is being taken care of. As if our happiness and our bad feelings are coming from what happens. And we have to just be open to looking at the true nature of cause and effect. Cause and effect is not it's backwards the way the world sees it, the way the ego has defined it. The world has defined the cause as being in the world, and then the effect is our mind, the way that our mind feels and thinks, and even learning. It's as if we've been conditioned by the world. Even when we talk in metaphor, we can say metaphorically that we've been conditioned to believe a lot of things, and it's often assumed that we've been conditioned by the world. But really we've been conditioned by the ego, and the ego is not in the world, though the ego seems to act through the world. But the ego is just an idea in the mind that doesn't need to be taken seriously. And it was only taken seriously because it was valued. Because it seemed to offer what we want. It seemed to offer us the specialness that seemed, it just seems crazy to me now. Like more and more as I go into it, it just is like, what is that? What is this idea of specialness? This idea of being, of existing as a small thing, as something on its own. No, it doesn't feel good anymore. Who we are, who I am, what the reality of things is unlimited, and that's the freedom, that's the happiness, that's the peace. That sense of being limitless, of having no boundaries, and nothing that can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. It says in the beginning of the Course, nothing unreal exists. Nothing unreal exists, meaning nothing that the ego made, which includes all of time and space and this entire cosmos, and including the self that it has seduced us into believing is who we are. None of it exists. Nothing unreal exists. And in this seeing, in this awareness is peace of God. Herein lies the peace of God. The peace of God is everything. The world is nothing. And every time we seem to choose one over the other, we will experience, which is every moment, we're always choosing one or the other, we'll seem to receive everything or nothing. And coming to that awareness, that seeing of how clear, how it is black and white, it really is black and white, it's always one or the other. Coming to that ability to see that, or it's just a willingness and a desire to see that, is what will ultimately free the mind from ever believing that death could be real. That pain could be real. And I know that there's spiritualities that teach that, well, you need to experience pain and death and suffering in order to appreciate life and appreciate happiness. And it's just not true. You don't, really what we are is without an opposite. What we are is without an opposite and is complete. Infinity and unity and oneness is, it is, God is not in need of a devil in order to know itself as God. Our true self is pure and just, yeah, it's happy. It's happy, and it's happy because there is no opposite. It's happy because there's nothing else. It's happy because reality is happy. And reality is oneness. Duality is nothing. You can't have both oneness and duality. Oneness and duality cannot coexist. They're mutually exclusive. And so we can't say that duality came out of oneness, and that duality is there in order to provide a contrast to oneness, so that we can appreciate oneness. Oneness doesn't need an opposite in order to be appreciated. So, those are my words that can hopefully provide some insight for you into special relationship and the dirty darkness that's under the surface there. I heard it said that Ken Wapnick, actually, I think he shared this in one of his classes, about how if you look at, or actually I think it was in The Disappearance of the Universe, they said that if you look at nature, and nature, it looks beautiful on the surface, when you're out in like a nature reserve and a bunch of trees and so forth. But if you look under the surface, you actually will see that the roots of the trees are actually fighting each other for the water and whatever other nutrients they need. They're actually battling under the soil. And I've never really researched that to see what that actually looks like, but that just made so much sense. When you really start to get a sense of of the sinister nature of this world. It's not actually a happy, it didn't come from God, and it really has no semblance at all to heaven. And so we cannot bring heaven to earth. We can only bring the illusion of earth to the heaven in our mind, to the heaven within, the heaven that still is everywhere. And then the illusion disappears, and only love remains. So thank you so much for your willingness to join me in these explorations, these ideas that I feel will, these ideas are just so precious. They're, I'm just so grateful that, the mind has opened up to remembering these things again, and the effects of them and accepting them in my own life has been so miraculous. I really don't experience myself as having big problems anymore. I still seem to go through moments where I have to, I seem to still have choices to make and form, and that's the big trick. The ego wants us to keep thinking that we have to make choices in form, as opposed to the one choice of accepting heaven as our inheritance. And when we accept that one choice, then Jesus says in the Course that it will be as if you're walking down a quiet path in summer, and all decisions will be as easy as breathing. And so this is really the peace that's being offered, and it's worth every ounce of our energy that we have to put into it.
Fuck you! Fuck you!
Okay. Had someone jump in the Hangout there from outside that I've never met and start cursing, so I must be having some kind of an effect here. I love you, and I look forward to joining you in our next Hangout. Many blessings.